Hey everybody, this is Joe Pace with Icewater Yoga, and today I'm going to be covering the best yoga pose for runners. And in my personal opinion, I believe that is low lunge, also known as anjaneyasana. You don't need to know what anjaneyasana means, just know that low lunge is the pose for you if you are a runner. And the reason I like it is because it addresses the part of my body that becomes really tight when I run, and also gives a lot of options for people who don't necessarily get tight in the spot that I get tight in. It's also not a really demanding pose, so it makes it really nice if you're running all the time. This isn't something that's going to be really pushing your body with any sort of intensity. So with low lunge, I want to demonstrate a little bit what it is first, and then talk about what parts of the body it's actually addressing. All you got to do is take 1 foot forward and 1 foot back. So we have the back knee on the mat. You can always put a towel or something underneath your knee if it feels painful. And then you're sitting up like so. So you can start with the right knee underneath your right hip and the left knee right over the left ankle. And you don't need to go any further than this with your feet any further apart from one another. You can stay here, lift through your hands, and then just breathe. You'll feel, especially if you're pretty tight in the front of your hip, you'll probably already feel a stretch right through here. This area is what in my body gets really tight when I run because it's pulling my knee up constantly, and I have more open hamstrings than I do hip flexors. But what I really like about this pose isn't just that it addresses the hip flexor, it's that it addresses the hip flexor as much as you want it to. It can also get your back, and it also gets your hamstring if you use it the right way. So what I'm talking about when I talk about getting your hip flexor as much as you want, when you start to get comfortable in the pose, you can walk your front foot out a little bit more or walk your back knee back. You'll notice your hips start to sink. If you allow your hip points to lift, so as opposed to letting my pelvis spill forward, if I lift the hip points and then shift the hips forward in space as opposed to down and rotate down, if I shift them forward, I'm bringing a massive stretch into my front right hip flexor. From there, whoop, I can lift up and maybe back. And this is where the back bend comes in. So for runners, especially if you're running a lot of miles, my balance is a mess right now. If you're running a lot of miles, there's a tendency for the body to start to hunch over and for the back muscles to get lazy. Here, we give the back an opportunity to lift and get a nice back bend with opening, and then the arms can lift, as mentioned, with the hips shifting forward. So now we've gotten the hip flexor and the back, which are huge problem areas for runners. And then simply from this position to get the hamstring, shift the hips back. And then you can curl the toes back towards you. Hands can come to blocks. All right, so the hands are to block so you're not so crazy forward folding. And again, the right knee is right underneath the right hip. You can draw the chest forward, left hip draws back, get as much of a hamstring stretch as you want. Then you can go back and forth, inhaling and exhaling. Do this for 2 or 3 minutes on each side, and you will be feeling pretty good if you're a runner. It's getting the parts of the body that your body is using most when you're running. Of course, it's not getting every muscle, but it's getting the major running muscle groups. So that is anjaneyasana, in my opinion, the best yoga pose for runners. It addresses the hip flexors, the hamstrings, and the back, and 2 to 3 minutes on each side is an amazing cool down. It's an amazing warm up, and also it's pretty fun to do too. So hope you enjoy. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate your time.